All right, hey everyone, welcome to the Helm developer call for May 13th, 2001. Let's see, we got a few announcements, all from Bridget. So Bridget, take it away.
I regret to inform you all that instead of being 2001, it is 2021. I don't believe it either. And
Yeah, let's
slight
jump ahead
update.
20 years.
Cannot believe we are all still computering. It's ridiculous. We have a release coming, and I am going to look to Mr. Farina to tell us something about that. I added it to the agenda, but it's his thoughts.
We're supposed to cut a release candidate on Monday. So we need to get everything in that we want to get in because we're supposed to cut a release candidate on Monday. So if you have something you really want merged in, you might want to go track down a maintainer and get them to review and merge it. We are up to 152 open PRs, which is a little higher than we'd like to probably have. I don't think we've been doing a great job curating this stuff lately. So, and the upgrade for Kubernetes 121 isn't merged, which we probably need to get merged in before this Monday, because that's one of the key things.
Oh yeah, that's right. That got released.
Yeah, so we need to get that one folded in. There is an open PR for it. It just hasn't been merged. In fact, it's in the milestone. So I'll try to give it some time today and tomorrow. And then again, Monday morning, and we can discuss cutting release Monday. But we'll have to get that by the end of the day. That's all I want to say. We need to focus on this for a short bit.
Awesome. And then the only other thing I put on the announcement list was I noticed that Dr. Butcher had put a time boxing on the discussion for the HIP for Helm 4 planning. Dr. Butcher, I don't know if you have anything else you want to say about that, but according to the internets, we have another week to discuss it on the HIP.
Wait, I got something done early. Okay, another week it is. I'm good.
That's all
I
I've
assure
got.
you it was entirely unintentional that I did it early. I just misread the calendar. So, don't set expectations accordingly.
Awesome. That's all I got.
Okay, and on to discussion. A HIP on caching with Farina.
All right. So I've discussed this before about bringing caching in. Right now, when you download a chart, we probably didn't realize this. Every time you pull or install, the chart is stuck into the cache with the index files. It's just the chart name -version.tgz file. Now, of course, we can't just pull from there because say you've got two WordPress charts from two different repositories with two different content with the same name and version, they'll jump on each other. That doesn't work because it's, you can't verify that it's right. And this HIP brings in the idea of having a local cache for content addressability, to be able to actually check or actually download, and it'll plug in with the chart downloader to, if you already have it locally and you can verify that it's the right addressable thing, then use it from the cache instead of getting it elsewhere. That way you can skip downloading. This would probably help people who are always pulling and installing the same charts. Like I know I install WordPress way too often in demos. It would stop it from always downloading and just pull from my cache, which might alleviate pressure on chart repositories. This would have been great when we had the stable and incubator chart repositories before. There's even a point, right? A folder you can cache in your CI toolchains as well. So you can use that caching, but it brings in this idea. It should be backwards compatible and work with what we've got now. So I'm curious for feedback. And I need 2 core maintainers, not me, to look at it and vote on it before we can move forward. We have some work in progress code that's already been started on it too.
I haven't read thoroughly through the rejected ideas, TM, but I'm sure that you are going to spend plenty of time thinking about all the ways this could go horribly wrong. And I feel like that's the only thing that we want to be sure to not fall into a trap of we have cached but totally wrong data.
Yeah, so it's content addressable. And one of the things we have to do is just verify that content addressability. And since Helm already passes around hashes of stuff, right? Like your index file has your digest in it, which is a hash. There are certain ways where you can look and know and double check hashes along the way to know whether or not you need to download it. But it walks through those situations. Now, I imagine there are situations I didn't think of, which is why I'd really like some other folks to take a look at it to see if they notice something that I didn't, because caching is one of those things where things can go horribly wrong. Yeah. All right, that's all I had on that.
Is this something that you wanted to have reviewed by the end of the release candidate for the, like, as in a candidate for this release, or is this something longer term?
A candidate for this release? No, because this release, we cut the release candidate on Monday. So I do not expect to get the HIP and the code merged for Monday. So I would be targeting 3.7 at the earliest because this is a new feature.
Do you want to time box this then?
For feedback?
Mm-hmm.
It's not so much feedback. For something like this, I need 2 maintainers to approve it who are on Helm. And so that's really going to be the thing. Which 2 maintainers can I drag into reviewing it and giving me some good feedback?
You can sign me up probably with the whole release candidate. I might not be able to take immediate action with that, but you can definitely put me on the list for one of the core maintainers that can look at this and as an action item to review.
Okay. Yeah, and I won't try and drag anyone into this until after the release candidate's out. Because if we all put in a little time on that, I'd rather get time on the release candidate first. Okay. That's it for that.
Okay, and then we also have a demo. And
Sure. And I'll try to make this quick. So we've been working on something. Actually, while I'm talking, Bridget, can you make me a co-host so I can screen share for a minute? So we've been working on a project called Hipper over at SUSE. And what we've been working on is, I call it package management for cluster admins, because Helm is great if you want to do things like deal with application operation and you want to install packages there, because you can deal with, multiple instances of an application within a namespace or the same application across many namespaces, because you deal with multi-tenancy. But there's a number of people who are trying to use Helm for cluster admin stuff, and they keep asking us to add features and do things. And it turns out SUSE through Rancher had already been doing this. If you actually go look at Rancher and you go to their app catalog, which is really like system services, it's like install logging, install monitoring. These are system services. They'd actually built a bunch of logic around this. And so, well, not the same, but similar and inspired from lesson learned, we created something called Hipper that we're starting to poke at, and it's built on Helm and charts. So I'll do a little bit of screen sharing here. What do we got here? So I'll share the website first real quick. This gives, do I have the good diagram? It's the same kind of thing as Helm, but we make different assumptions here. It's built on the Helm SDK, and it's built on charts. And the way that we have extended everything is through annotations. So in annotations and charts, we say, ooh, somebody made this assumption, and we're going to layer in some stuff. And we make the assumption that the person who's using this is a cluster administrator who can do whatever they want in a cluster. Okay. Because they're not just restricted to namespaces, they're a cluster operator, right? That thing in scope, if you go to the Helm profiles in the community repo, you go here, we have our user profiles, and you come down to this user who is profiles not in scope, the cluster operator. That's who we're going after, right? Because that's a problem that we have had ourselves over at Rancher. And so we did that. And what we did was we created extensions for charts. And the big ones we're starting with is You can install something into the same namespace repeatedly and with the same release name repeatedly, and those are defined inside the chart. We have an idea of shared dependencies, and we're working on optional dependencies that work the same way. And shared dependencies are, you've got something like service A and B both depend on C. And if you install A and C is not there, it says, hey, this thing isn't installed, and it goes and installs it, but it installs it as a separate release. It just entirely separate release that can be independently managed. In fact, if you use Helm LS, you can see those things. So let me, and then optional is one of the things in Works, which is, you can think of it as the optional suggest dependencies. We're working on that now. So let me change my screen share to a terminal. I'm going to make this quick. So you've got charts. And so if you look in here, here's just a demo chart. You'll see some of these things here as annotations, right? It's called Hipper, but you've got, oh no, my mouse is acting up. You've got the release name, right? You've got the namespace it'll go into, and then there's some shared dependencies. So if I did Hipper install, we haven't automatically automated create namespace yet, but that's one of the things on our to-do list because you're a cluster admin. If I did something like this, it's going to go ahead and install. Okay, so in my cluster, it installed demo A and demo B into their own namespaces because that's where they were each defined to be installed. And then it came in and installed demo. Now, if I were to, let's see. That's where it is. Okay. Now I'm uninstalling demo, but the dependencies are still there. And if I go to install it again, what it's going to do is it's going to see the shared dependencies already there, and it skips them. It's designed for system services, installing things into the same namespace, and you could have a repository of a bunch of charts designed to work together around these system services and then depend on each other, but they're all installed separately. And if it did something like, because it's doing Helm, you see everything there because these are all Helm charts installed into a cluster, and we're just layering in some cluster operator business logic on top of it to kind of help those things along. So that's the gist of Hipper and kind of the target audience we're building on top of Helm and charts in order to make this happen. Are there any questions?
Could you, it's Mark here.
Yeah.
We might have like a need for this, so I want to understand it better. Can you give me an example, a little more concrete? Like what would a cluster operator do?
So say you've got, a few system services. Maybe you've got an operator for Postgres. Maybe you've got some system services, and you want them both to be tied into logging and monitoring, right? You want one system service for logging and monitoring, and my Postgres operator, right? If I go and install that, then hey, it should, if logging and monitoring are there, install them if they're not there. And then your next thing comes along, maybe it's a MySQL operator or something like that, and you say, hey, that should use the same Prometheus and logging, but they're already there, so I don't have to install them, right? Because they're system services that are already there, and it installs them into well-known namespaces and with release names so that anything can know how to find them if it needs to find them and discover them because it knows where they're at in the cluster. And you can repeatedly do this across cluster to cluster to cluster. Our case with Rancher is we manage lots of clusters, and we want stuff to be in the same locations in each of the clusters we're managing. Heck, Darren's talked about Fleet testing it up to 1 million clusters, and you want system services in all the same places across every cluster. So how do you do that repeatedly and record that information? Because if you're going to go to many clusters, recording all of that with GitOps and having an independent Git repository for each of those clusters is kind of a lot. So how does this work? And so does that help?
Cool. Yeah, it does. So if you have a well-defined set of clusters that doesn't change, maybe this is not for you. But if you grow your number of clusters and they all have a set pattern that you want to repeat, this is amazing.
And you could have a repository of Helm charts that are tied together because you know where everything is expected to find everything else within that repository.
Cool.
So that's what we're trying to do with it. It's not the same exact case as Helm because that goes after application operation, but we're building on top of it. And any of the stuff that really works out for us, we'll try to upstream it after we kind of proof it out.
So what if you need you have a dependent, one of these shared dependencies, but you need a different value? So possible?
That's where we haven't figured that out yet, quite frankly, because it gets complicated. Because if you have three things that all depend on one shared service, and now one of those wants the value to be different and the others don't, right? Now you run into some real big dependency issues that kind of get outside of the let's make the whole experience easy approach, right? Do you have to run it as a second version of Prometheus because you want to configure differently? And that's something that somebody has to have some knowledge about and what they're going to do. Now here, you can pass in things like your own namespace and your own release name. And you can change those here. So I can go and override the defaults that are specified. So if somebody wants to do that, they can.
So this is really cool. And my question, Farina, is it seems like from the scale that you're talking about that are you anticipating people mostly using this tool like in their pipelines, or are you imagining more like interactive hands-on use, or maybe both? I'm just kind of curious because as you know, Bob, when you're optimizing for like, we expect automation to use this tool versus we expect a person to use it. Sometimes you make different trade-offs. So I'm just kind of curious how you expect usage to work.
Yeah, we're probably expecting tooling to use it. In fact, one of the things that we're trying to do is it's structured like Helm internally with an SDK and a client, and the client uses the SDK because if the things continue on, because this is an experiment for us at this point, if things continue on, we're going to build other tools on top of it. And instead of wrapping the CLI, we'll wrap the SDK. And so we want that functionality to be built into other automation on top of it. Because that's how Rancher SUSE does a lot of stuff. And the whole idea of using annotations this way is actually something that Rancher's been doing for a very long time. If you dig into their chart repositories, you'll see all kinds of annotations in there that trigger different effects in the installation tooling. And they're built on top of the Helm SDK.
Very cool. Thank you for showing us.
Okay. That's all I got on this. If anybody wants to talk more about it, feel free to reach out to me offline.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Farina. It looks like we had one more discussion items for new FAQs from office hours sessions. Farina.
So I am going to submit a PR on this, but it seemed like we had the same questions, or you all had the same questions being asked during the office hour session. And it seems like we could build out the FAQ section to address a lot of those. And then from there, add those back into, documentation as necessary, or build out blog posts. But it seems like building out the FAQ section would be a good start. And then, you can just send everybody the FAQ link and say, hey, instead of let me Google that for you, hey, let me send you the FAQ link. So you'll probably start seeing some of those from me as I walk through what Bridget so kindly captured from the office hour session. So it's more of an FYI. Or say, Karina, don't do that. That's horrible.
And please do that. It's wonderful. Thank you.
That's all I have.
And just a reminder, we need moderator and triage for next week.
I will sign up for triage.
Great.
I can moderate if.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome. Is there anything that we missed that people want to bring up?
Wait, who said triage? I'm sorry.
Farina.
Brina.
Brina.
Right here.
Sorry. All right. And then Mark. Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
I have a question actually, just because I see some names of people who don't come to this call all the time. And so I would love to give people who are interested in doing so, not putting anyone specific on the spot, a chance to unmute and tell us what they're interested in, what they're looking for out of this conversation. If they have a specific thing they're trying to get into the next release, or, you know, what their thoughts are.
Hi, I'm a new face. Thank you for making some space for me just to do a quick intro. I'm just joining to see what this call is all about. This is my second week at GitHub, so I just saw this on my calendar and thought it sounded interesting. So just listening in.
Hey
That's
everyone,
super
welcome.
awesome.
Welcome.
Glad to have you.
Thank you.
everyone. My name is Andy Block. I'm a senior architect from Red Hat. I've been working in the Helm space for a long time. I wrote one of the books a while back on that. I've obviously gone through the newer books that's out there too for Helm, so I just want to connect with the community a little better.
Awesome. Thanks for joining. Okay. And I guess that's a wrap till next week. I will see you all next week.
Thank you.
Have a good week, everybody.
Bye.